I was raised in Minnesota, and my dad was a hunter and fisherman.
Yeah.
And that was considered vacation where I come from. We weren't going to a hotel somewhere and swimming in a pool. It was whatever the season was whatever you were hunting and whatever you were fishing.
Yeah.
And so I was raised with that and took those skills that I learned at a very young age of how to be appropriate in the woods and started to apply them when I was older, living out here.
Yeah.
Looking for the bent grass, looking for the hair on the tree. You know which direction the animal is going. If you know what animal that you're tracking, you know which end of the hair is lighter and darker. So then you know which direction the animal was going. Is it rubbed against the tree? Knowing the footprints, what direction they're facing. So I was really lucky to spend some time in New Mexico, and they've just got some terrific mentors there. From technical aspect, but also people that have gone professional that will tell you when you go professional, it changes things. You got to get the shot because that's your rent, that's your mortgage, that's food for your family. So sometimes you got to push things a little bit harder. And the advice was be really prepared to make that move if you're going to make that move to professional photography. That was great advice. Through the camera club there, I got to see people doing all kinds of photography, architectural and portrait and studio work and all the post-processing with textures, lighting and photoshopping. And I said, how can I bring that into wildlife photography? Because so much of wildlife photography is straight photography. Little dodge and burn, little sharpen. How can I bring some painterly effects in? Some clearing the canvas. And so for me, my photography, I'm trying to incorporate some of the newer technology in post-processing with a good old-fashioned picture of a bird.
How many years have you been doing this?
I think it kind of started percolating with moose because everybody said we didn't have moose on the east side, so they came over about 2000. So I found a nursery on the east side around 2001, and that kind of started my photography journey and wildlife journey, and kind of just taking my own route to get there because nobody knew that the moose were over here. Nobody knew there was a nursery. There wasn't tons of photographers. There wasn't social media blasts. You could just go out and enjoy the moose and take your pictures and go on your way. The first time I saw a moose on the east side, I was out by myself and I saw this donkey standing in the water. I'm like, well, so-and-so's donkey must have gotten loose. What's it doing way over here? Then I'm like, that's not a donkey, it's a moose. We have a moose? It's terribly exciting. She went on to have 3 sets of twins.
Aww.
All of them girls, and then the 4th set was a boy and a girl. And those moose, generation after generation, still roam in her footsteps. I find them because I know their history. You know their history of where they are in March, then you don't go out really looking for moose. You go to where you saw them last March. Babies follow in their mama's footsteps. They start to branch out. They have these little patterns that they follow, paralleling where mama maybe would have been a couple of years back or generations back. It's interesting. I wish Rocky would have, instead of just randomly collaring, would have collared families of moose because their interaction and their touching base with each other is really interesting. Brothers hang out for lives together. Sisters will parallel each other. One will maybe be upriver or downriver, whatever, but they're going to be near each other. The twins will always be near each other. So it's really interesting, the relationships that they have. Babies get kicked away, but like last year, a calf got kicked away really early from mama. She was expecting a new one. And her older brother, that was 3 years old, picked up the calf that was kicked away and hung out with the calf till mama had the baby. Then the baby allowed the little girl to come back, and then after a period of time allowed the boy to come back. So they have these relationships that stay just like our families do. Scientists, biologists will say that they walk in the same footsteps, they'll stop at the same bushes to eat year after year.
Yeah.
And you do see that.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is the offspring's following the same patterns.
Mhm.
And then what happens when one gets killed, another one comes in and fills the gap. And a lot of times I have to go home and go through my Lightroom catalog to figure out, like, do I know this moose? Is it familiar? Or like find something in their antler that's maybe an anomaly, or on their body.
Yeah.
Ones that have had severe winter tick, you can see that pattern. We had a moose come over from the west side after the big fire, and a couple of bulls ended up at Brainerd Lake.
Okay.
And of course that was fall when the fire happened, and I saw them, and we got shut down pretty quickly, after that, but I saw them pretty soon, and they were crunchy black, scars on them, and but looked really pretty healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't assimilate very well with the moose that are regularly over here, but had a mutual respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, okay, you guys, they don't know where you came from. You can be here, but you stay over there. But that was interesting dynamic to watch. And then as their hair filled in, they became harder and harder to distinguish of who was who with that. I love a nice meadow, and you show up and it's all wet and the grass is laid down where the moose have walked through, and you know which direction they've gone by direction of where the grass is laid down. So they push it down as they go forward, right? So you follow those tracks, the winding. Moose don't walk a straight line. They go this way and that way. But you know where they're going to go usually. You know where their end destination is. But it's just a great feeling to feel very skilled. I had a great episode in Wild Basin. Just that scenario. The wind was in my face. The sun was at my back. I was following some moose tracks, and I knew I was going to find a really big moose because I'd scouted the night before, and the poop was huge.
Wow.
I mean, really big poop. And I looked, and finally I saw him, and he just laid down on the other side of this pond. So I crept in. I thought, oh, he's going to be down for an hour or two.
Yeah.
So I sat down on the other side of this tiny pond, and I waited. And the sun came up, and the sun was horrible. And I thought, I'm going to get the worst picture ever. But I have to see this moose because he's huge. And finally he rose. And so did I. I got up on one knee, and he didn't know I was there because still I had the breeze in my favor. He had no idea. Biggest bull moose I'd ever seen.
Wow.
The pond got very, very, very small. Suddenly, I didn't feel like I was a very safe distance as he rose. And he came to the edge of the water, and I'm like, I got one shot at this. And even though it's going to be a terrible picture, I'm going to take it anyways. So I'm going to wait for him to drink. And he did. And I rose up a little bit further. I snapped like 3 shots. Boom, boom, boom. And he looked me dead in the eye. And I could hear the snort. Crap.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
End of photo session. We considered that a closure right there. And I fully exposed myself so he knew I was a person and not something creeping out there.
Yeah.
I said, so sorry to bother you, Mr. Moose. And I slowly eased out of the area.
Yeah.
And he just stood there and watched me go, and he was okay with that.
Yeah.
Had I been all kinds of creepy about it or tried to hide myself, he would have gotten suspicious and on edge. He knew I was a person, and he just let me walk away. So And it was a really crappy photo.
Oh, that's too bad.
Just the worst. It's okay. It was a great experience.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you're going to get really crappy photos.
Yeah.
You know, you see them on social media. You see them printed by people. It's the ass end of a moose. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
But I don't want a rear end up on my wall. Unless it's Matthew McConaughey butt naked. That's okay. That's a good rear end to put on my wall. But a moose butt? No. So you got to have the right light.
Mm-hmm.
With moose and elk, they have this thing called an eye guard.
Mm-hmm.
It's the antler that is in the forward part to protect their eyes. So when the sun gets so high, that will throw a shadow right over the eye. And for a photographer, your day is done.
Mm-hmm.
The photo session is over, because if you can't see the eyes, there's usually very little point in the image.
Mm-hmm.
Once the shadow is across there, or a hard shadow on the neck or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't make for a pleasant photo. You got to have that soft light that's early morning, evening,
Mm-hmm.
where you don't throw those big shadows. And they got to be facing you. And they can't be standing next to a telephone pole,
Mm-hmm.
or standing in the parking lot where you pulled up, or any of the other thousands of things that they have a bad sense about in order to get a good photo. So people put out a lot of images. I tend not to put out a lot of images. I tend to withhold, because I once had a photographer friend say, "Have you ever read a bad book? Have you gone back to that author? So why put out a bad image and be known for a bad image?" That's not to say I don't think that everything I did last year is terrible.
Yeah.
Because it is.
No, it isn't.
It is, yeah. No, I'm very much a person that what I did yesterday is no good, and what I do tomorrow is going to be better.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, always getting better, always striving to do better, always looking for better light. That's why people go out and photograph moose day after day after day. There's always a better shot. You've
Mhm.
never got the perfect one.
Mm-hmm.
Job
Mhm.
security. So my job as a wildlife photographer is to leave wildlife wild, to go in, photograph the animal, and to leave them as I find them. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that have cameras that are paparazzi, and they also photograph animals. They have a different philosophy. Whatever it takes to get the shot, however you need to do it. They get too close, the animal gets afraid and runs away. Paparazzi is different.
Yeah.
You know, to me, there's wildlife photographers and they're paparazzis. And paparazzi is what killed Princess Diana.
Yeah.
And it's also what's killing the wildlife. It's killing the tundra. It's doing whatever you have to do to get the shot, and it doesn't matter what the cost is to the environment or to the animal.
It seems like you have a different relationship with the wildlife than a lot of these people who just want to jump out their car and take a picture and jump back in. And you're tracking them. You know their behaviors and their family units. Is that what you think makes a good wildlife photographer?
Well, for me, it's more satisfying
Yeah.
to bring all those components together. Absolutely, I've done parking lot photography, roadside photography.
Yeah.
I live with Rocky Mountain National Park as my back door. You have to do that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're just going to drive by stuff. But I get more from the experience of finding the animal on my own, tracking the animal, watching for the signs, knowing their habits. That feels kind of a full circle within me. You know, I feel like I earned the image too. But, you know, I mean, living next to Rocky, one of the ironic things is like you can go out and look for ptarmigan for 3 hours and come back to your car and a tourist is photographing it next to your car. And you just slap your forehead and go, well, that's life in Rocky Mountain National Park. You know, the wildlife is going to be in the parking lots. It's going to be right next to the trail. You don't have to be super creative sometimes. But it's a lot more fun.
Right.
It's a lot more fun to know your subject matter. And, you know, a lot of times you come out empty-handed when you're solo shooting and going off on your own. But when you get it, it's a lot more fun.
Yeah.